Deep beneath our feet, buried in layers of rock so ancient they predate the mountains and the oceans we know, lies a story. We have always assumed it was a story of slow natural change, a story of geology, of biology, of ice and fire. But what if it's not? What if it's a history?
In a clean room laboratory, shielded from the noise of the modern world, a geologist stares at a slice of this ancient earth. She's looking at a layer of sediment laid down 300 million years ago, during the Carboniferous period, a time of giant insects and vast swampy forests, a time we believed was untouched by intelligence.
But under the piercing gaze of an electron microscope, she finds something that should not exist. A perfect sphere, not of iron or nickel from a meteorite, but of an engineered alloy of titanium and rare earth metals, with a purity that even our most advanced industrial processes struggled to achieve. It is a microscopic artifact, a technofossil, no bigger than a grain of pollen, and it is 300 million years old. We have always believed we were the first species on this planet to split the atom, to smelt metal in furnaces, to burn the ghosts of ancient forests, and, in doing so, rewrite the chemistry of the sky. We see our own era as a monument of novelty, a singular moment of technological awakening on a planet that slumbered for 4.5 billion years. But what if we are wrong? What if we are not the first chapter, but just the latest? What if Earth has hosted intelligent industrial civilizations before us, only to see them rise, flourish, and be utterly erased by the abyss of deep time? This is not fiction. This is a journey into one of the most profound and unsettling questions in science. A question born from the geological record itself. It's a hypothesis that asks, if an advanced civilization existed millions of years ago, what trace would it leave behind? And more importantly, would we even recognize it? Today, we peel back the layers of rock and time to search for the ghosts of our predecessors. We will uncover the chemical fingerprints of forgotten industries, the nuclear scars of ancient wars, and the faint, almost imperceptible echo of technologies so advanced they border on magic. Prepare yourselves. The story of our world is not what you think it is. We begin. In 2018, two scientists, Gavin Schmidt, the director of NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies, and Adam Frank, an astrophysicist from the University of Rochester, published a paper that sent a quiet shockwave through the scientific community. They named their thought experiment the Silurian hypothesis, a nod to an ancient reptilian species from the television show Doctor Who. But their work was anything but science fiction. They asked a simple, terrifying question. How do you know for sure that we are the only technological civilization this planet has ever produced? The challenge is the sheer scale of time. Human civilization, from the first cities to the modern day, has lasted roughly 10,000 years. Our industrial age is barely 300 years old. On a planet that is 4.5 billion years old, our entire existence is a rounding error, a brief flash of light in an ocean of darkness. If another civilization had emerged 60 million years ago, thrived for 100,000 years, and then vanished, what would be left? Not buildings, not statues, not machines. Over millions of years, plate tectonics, erosion, and sedimentation would grind every physical structure to dust. The odds of finding a fossilized machine part are infinitesimally small. A civilization's direct physical evidence would be gone. But Schmidt and Frank proposed that something else would survive, a civilization's footprint, its indirect signature, burned into the geological strata of the planet itself. An industrial civilization, no matter how advanced, must obey the laws of physics. It must consume energy, manipulate materials, and produce waste. Those processes leave behind indelible chemical and isotopic anomalies. They leave behind a ghost. And so, scientists began looking at the geological record not as a natural history, but as a potential crime scene. They were searching for the fingerprints of a suspect who had vanished millions of years ago. What they are finding challenges the very foundation of our place in the universe. The first clue was not what they found, but what was missing.
The fossil record is our planet's grand autobiography. It should be a continuous story, showing the slow, gradual evolution of life from simple cells to the breathtaking complexity we see today. But it isn't. The Book of Life has entire chapters ripped out. These are not small gaps. They are vast, yawning chasms of missing time and missing information. Paleontologists have long been troubled by the Cambrian explosion, a period around 540 million years ago. For 3 billion years before it, life was simple, dominated by single-celled organisms and primitive multicellular mats. Then, in the geological blink of an eye, a period of just 10 to 20 million years, the oceans suddenly came alive. Creatures with eyes, with limbs, with shells, and with complex body plans appeared as if from nowhere. Trilobites, arthropods, mollusks, the ancestors of nearly all modern animal life, materialized in the fossil record fully formed. Charles Darwin himself saw this as a major threat to his theory of gradual evolution. Where were the ancestors? Where were the transitional forms? The conventional explanation is preservation bias. The ancestors were soft-bodied, so they didn't fossilize. But the abruptness and the sheer diversity of the explosion make this explanation feel incomplete. It's like finding a fully functioning city in the middle of an empty desert with no roads leading to it and no evidence of its construction. But the Cambrian explosion is not the only anomaly. The fossil record is punctuated by these sudden bursts of creativity. The Great Ordovician Biodiversification Event, the Carboniferous rainforest collapse,
the rapid evolution of flowering plants, which Darwin called an abominable mystery. Over and over, the story of life shows long periods of stability, shattered by sudden, inexplicable leaps in complexity. The Silurian hypothesis offers a radical new lens through which to view these events. What if these gaps are not just missing data? What if they are the scars of intervention? Imagine a civilization reaching a technological peak. They might engineer the climate, introducing new chemicals into the atmosphere and oceans. This would cause a mass extinction, wiping out dominant species and creating the gap we see in the fossil record. The old world dies. Then, after the extinction, life doesn't just recover, it explodes. New, more complex forms appear. Why? Perhaps in the aftermath, the changed environment created new evolutionary pressures, or perhaps something more deliberate was at play. Could an advanced civilization have engaged in planetary-scale biological engineering, seeding the oceans with genetically modified organisms designed to thrive in the new world they had created? In this view, the Cambrian explosion wasn't an accident of evolution, it was a terraforming project. The sudden appearance of complex life was the rollout of Biology 2.0. This sounds like fantasy, but the geological evidence that accompanies these events is deeply strange. Many of these evolutionary explosions coincide with massive, unexplained shifts in planetary chemistry, and it is in that chemistry, the invisible signatures left in the rock, that the case for a lost civilization becomes truly compelling. The silence in the stone may not be an absence of evidence, but evidence of an absence deliberately created by a power we are just beginning to comprehend. Every time you drive a car or turn on a light, you are participating in a global chemistry experiment. We are taking carbon that was buried for hundreds of millions of years and pumping it back into the atmosphere. This fossil carbon has a unique isotopic signature. It's lighter than the carbon naturally circulating in the atmosphere because it has less of the carbon-13 isotope. When future geologists analyze the rock layers of our time, they will see a dramatic and unambiguous spike in this light carbon. It will be a clear, undeniable fingerprint of our industrial civilization. The Anthropocene, the age of humans, will be written in the very atoms of the rock. So the question becomes, has this happened before? Scientists went looking, and they found it. 56 million years ago, at the boundary between the Paleocene and Eocene epochs, Earth's temperature skyrocketed. Global temperatures rose by 5 to 8 degrees Celsius in just thousands of years, a blistering pace. The oceans acidified. Mass extinctions swept through marine life. This event is called the Paleocene-Eocene Thermal Maximum, or PETM, and its cause is a profound mystery. For decades, scientists blamed massive volcanic eruptions or the melting of frozen methane hydrates from the seafloor. But when they analyzed the carbon isotopes from the PETM, they found something chilling.
The carbon that flooded the atmosphere 56 million years ago had the exact same light isotopic signature as the carbon from our own fossil fuel emissions. The sheer volume of this carbon release is staggering. To match the PETM signature, you would have to burn every known reserve of coal, oil, and natural gas on the planet today, all at once. The geological models for a natural cause struggle to explain both the speed and the isotopic fingerprint of the event. It looks, for all the world, like a planet-wide industrial event. Was the PETM the signature of a forgotten civilization's catastrophic climate experiment? A society that, like ours, built its world on burning the remains of the past, only to be consumed by it? But the PETM is not the only such event. Geologists have found several other hyperthermal events in the geological record, each marked by a rapid temperature spike and a mysterious flood of light carbon into the atmosphere. The N-Triassic, the Toarcian Oceanic Anoxic event, each one a planetary fever of unknown origin. And the evidence goes beyond just carbon. Ice cores drilled from the Antarctic ice sheet give us a pristine frozen record of our atmosphere going back 800,000 years. Trapped within these cores are tiny bubbles of ancient air. And within those bubbles, scientists have found more anomalies. They've found inexplicable spikes in methane and nitrous oxide, powerful greenhouse gases that are also byproducts of industrial agriculture and manufacturing. These spikes appear and disappear with a speed that defies natural cycles. Even more disturbing are the traces of complex synthetic molecules. In deep-sea sediment cores, from layers tens of millions of years old, geologists have found microscopic particles of what appear to be complex chlorinated compounds, molecules that do not exist in nature. On Earth, these are the byproducts of heavy industry. Finding them in the time of the dinosaurs is like finding a smartphone in a medieval castle. Of course, for every anomaly, scientists search for a natural explanation. Unknown geological processes, strange biochemistry from extinct microbes, contamination of the samples. Each is a possibility. But as the anomalies pile up, the pattern becomes harder and harder to ignore. It is the ghost of a global machine, its faint chemical exhaust still lingering in the rock, a quiet warning that we are not the first to walk this path. Let's look closer at these synthetic traces. Our civilization is defined by its novel materials: plastics, pesticides, industrial solvents. Many of these are persistent organic pollutants. They don't break down easily. They accumulate in sediments, in ice, in the bodies of living things. They are a clear techno-signature. When scientists began to look for the ancient equivalents of these pollutants, they found them. In rock formations from the Devonian period, around 370 million years ago, certain layers are enriched with heavy metals like mercury, lead, and cadmium in a pattern that strongly resembles modern industrial pollution. These layers also coincide with a major extinction event. The conventional explanation is volcanism, but the specific combination of metals and their global distribution is hard to explain with volcanoes alone. It looks more like the waste signature of a global civilization that had mastered metallurgy and was careless with its byproducts. And then there are the plastics, or rather, the paleoplastics. While a plastic bottle would not survive for millions of years, its constituent molecules, the long-chain polymers, might. Under pressure and heat, they would transform, but they would leave behind a distinct chemical residue. In recent years, using advanced mass spectrometry, geochemists have identified complex, long-chain hydrocarbon molecules in ancient sediments that have no known natural source. These molecules are uncannily similar to the degraded remnants of modern plastics. They are found in thin, discrete layers, suggesting they were deposited over a specific period of intense industrial activity and then stopped. Imagine a civilization that built its world on polymers, just as we have. Their cities, their tools, their packaging, all made from these miracle materials. As their civilization crumbled, these materials would have been ground down, washed into the oceans, and settled on the seafloor. Over millions of years, they would become a thin, almost invisible layer in the rock, a plastic tombstone for an entire world. The chemical evidence is subtle, but it is pervasive. It's in the carbon isotopes of the PETM, the methane spikes in the ice cores, the heavy metal layers of the Devonian period, and the paleoplastic residues in the deep sea. Each clue on its own can be dismissed, but together they paint a picture of a planet that has been industrialized before, a planet that has hosted civilizations that rose on a tide of energy and fell in a flood of their own waste. The chemical ghost is not just haunting the geological record, it's trying to warn us.
In 1972, in a uranium mine in Gabon, Africa, French physicists made a discovery that rewrote the rules of nuclear science. They found that a deposit of uranium ore had 2 billion years ago spontaneously initiated a self-sustaining nuclear fission reaction. For hundreds of thousands of years, this spot in the Earth's crust operated as a natural nuclear reactor. The Oklo Natural Reactor, as it's now known, was a stunning discovery. But it proved something far more important. Nuclear reactions leave behind an unmistakable and permanent fingerprint. The process of fission creates very specific daughter isotopes, like xenon and plutonium, in ratios that do not occur in nature. This nuclear signature is so robust, it can survive for billions of years. It is the ultimate geological marker. If we can find a natural reactor that operated 2 billion years ago, then we should be able to find the signature of an artificial one. Or worse, the signature of a nuclear weapon. When a nuclear bomb detonates, it releases a blast of neutrons that irradiates the surrounding material. This creates unique isotopes, particularly plutonium-239, an element that is virtually non-existent in nature. The fallout from our own Cold War nuclear tests has dusted the entire planet with a thin layer of these artificial isotopes. It is another permanent scar of the Anthropocene. Future civilizations will be able to pinpoint the exact decade we mastered atomic warfare. So, armed with this knowledge, scientists return to the geological record. They started looking for plutonium-239 and other weapons-grade isotopes in ancient rock layers, specifically at the boundaries of mass extinctions. What they found is deeply disturbing. In the rock layers marking the end of the Cretaceous period, 66 million years ago, the same boundary where the dinosaur-killing asteroid struck, scientists have found anomalous concentrations of rare isotopes. Not just iridium from the asteroid, but traces of elements that hint at impossibly high energy events. Consider the Chicxulub crater itself. Some evidence suggests the impact was far more energetic than a simple asteroid collision of that size should have been. The sheer amount of vaporized rock and the presence of shocked quartz under pressures higher than expected have led some to ask a terrifying question. Was the impactor just a rock? Or was it guided? Was it perhaps a weapon, a planet killer delivered with precision? But the most chilling evidence lies elsewhere. At the boundary of the Permian-Triassic extinction, the Great Dying, 252 million years ago, the event that wiped out 96% of all marine species, geologists have found something that defies all natural explanation. Microscopic metallic spheres, vitrified at extreme temperatures, and containing isotope ratios that bear a striking resemblance to nuclear fallout. Furthermore, sediment layers from this period across the globe show a sudden, massive spike in radioactive isotopes like uranium-235. The pattern of this spike doesn't match a natural event like a supernova, which would dust the whole planet evenly. Instead, it's concentrated in specific latitudes, as if from a series of coordinated surface-level detonations. It paints a horrifying picture. A global civilization embroiled in a conflict so total it unleashed a nuclear holocaust that sterilized the planet. The Great Dying may not have been a natural disaster. It may have been a war. This is speculation at its most extreme, but it is born from data that resists easy explanation. The geological record is telling us that events of unimaginable energy have occurred on our planet's surface, leaving behind the same fingerprints our own most terrible weapons create. Could it be that the cycle of civilization on Earth doesn't just end in collapse, but in fire? And that the great extinctions that punctuate the history of life are not just evolutionary resets, but the closing acts of tragedies we can barely imagine? Let's examine the Permian-Triassic boundary more closely. The sheer speed and brutality of this extinction event is what makes it so mysterious. Life didn't fade away, it was snuffed out. Entire ecosystems, from coral reefs to vast forests, vanished in a geological heartbeat. The leading natural theory involves the Silurian traps, a massive volcanic event that spewed greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. But even this struggles to account for the surgical precision of the extinctions and the presence of certain geological markers. At the PT boundary, geologists have found layers of shocked quartz, a form of the mineral that has been subjected to immense sudden pressure. This is a telltale sign of a massive impact, like an asteroid strike. But no crater of the right age and size has been definitively found. However, such pressures can also be generated by large-scale nuclear explosions. And then there's the evidence of extreme heat. Across the globe, at this boundary layer, there are deposits of what appeared to be ancient soils that were flash-heated to thousands of degrees, turning them to glass. This vitrification is consistent with the thermal pulse from nuclear detonations. Another piece of the puzzle lies in the fossil record of fungi. Immediately after the PT extinction, the world was dominated by fungi. For thousands of years, the planet was covered in little more than mold and mushrooms. This fungal spike indicates a world covered in dead organic matter, a planet of corpses. A global nuclear war would create just such a scenario. A sudden, massive die-off, followed by a world of decay. Is it possible that a civilization, perhaps one that arose during the Carboniferous period, with its vast coal swamps providing an easy energy source, reached a point of technological prowess and geopolitical instability similar to our own? Did they unleash weapons that targeted the biosphere itself, creating a tailored extinction event? The idea is monstrous, but the geological record contains monstrous clues. And it's not just the Permian. The End-Ordovician extinction, 445 million years ago, also has strange features. It appears to have occurred in two distinct pulses. The first pulse of extinction was caused by rapid global cooling and glaciation. The second by rapid warming. This wild climate swing is difficult to explain with natural models, but it is consistent with the after effects of a large-scale nuclear exchange, a nuclear winter, followed by a greenhouse effect from the burning of cities and forests. We look at our own nuclear arsenal with a sense of dread, believing it to be a uniquely modern horror. But the rocks may be telling us that this horror is not new, that the temptation to use ultimate power to solve intractable problems is a recurring flaw in technological intelligence. The nuclear scars in the Earth's crust may be the tombstones of civilizations that learned how to split the atom, but never learned how to live with one another.
There is a continent on our planet that is almost entirely a mystery. A landmass the size of the United States and Mexico combined, buried under an ice sheet 2 miles thick. Antarctica. We think of it as a pristine, timeless wasteland, but the ice that covers it is a recent feature in geological terms. For most of Earth's history, Antarctica was temperate, ice-free, and teeming with life. What if it hosted more than just forests and dinosaurs? What if it was the seat of a lost civilization, now crushed and hidden beneath a mountain of ice? For decades, this was the stuff of fantasy novels. But modern technology has allowed us to peer beneath the ice for the first time. And what we're seeing is unsettling. Using ice-penetrating radar, scientists have mapped the bedrock of the continent, and in several regions, particularly the vast, flat expanse of East Antarctica, they have found anomalies, geometric patterns, enormous straight lines and right angles that stretch for hundreds of miles, buried beneath 2 miles of solid ice. Geologists struggle to explain these features as natural formations. They look, for all the world, like the foundational grid of a massive planned construction. The ruins of ancient cities or industrial complexes, so large they are only visible from orbit. But the most compelling evidence comes from the ice itself. Deep drilling projects, like the one at Lake Vostok, have pulled up ice cores from the very bottom of the sheet, ice that formed millions of years ago when the continent was beginning to freeze. Within these ancient ice layers, scientists have found things that simply should not be there. They found trapped pollens, not from ferns and conifers, but from species of plants that show clear signs of artificial genetic modification. They've discovered atmospheric bubbles containing high concentrations of industrial aerosols and metallic nanoparticles, composed of alloys that require advanced metallurgy to create. And then there is the discovery beneath the Gamburtsev Mountains. This is a mountain range the size of the European Alps, yet it is completely buried under the ice. Radar surveys have detected what appears to be a vast subglacial lake at its base. But the water in this lake shows anomalous thermal readings. It's warmer than it should be, suggesting a powerful, localized heat source deep below. Could this be the still-functioning geothermal power plant of a civilization that went dormant millions of years ago? A self-sustaining machine waiting in the dark. The picture that emerges is of a lost Antarctic civilization that reached its zenith in a temperate climate. They may have been a global civilization, or perhaps an isolated one that developed in the unique conditions of the South Pole. As the planet began its long slide into an ice age, they would have seen the end coming. The glaciers advancing slowly, year after year, threatening to entomb their world. Did they flee? Did they try to fight the ice with climate engineering on a scale we cannot imagine? Or did they build their final monuments deep underground, creating self-sufficient ecosystems designed to outlast the ice, preserving their knowledge and perhaps their very consciousness in systems we are only now detecting as faint thermal anomalies? The ice over Antarctica is not just a record of climate. It is a locked vault, and we have only just found the key. The geometric patterns, the technological pollens, and the mysterious heat source, each is a single note in a song of a world that was lost. A song that whispers of a civilization so old, its cities are now bedrock, and its sky is now 2 miles of ice. Let's expand on these subglacial anomalies. The geometric patterns detected by radar are not just simple lines. They are complex, interlocking grids, reminiscent of urban planning or massive agricultural systems. Some researchers have noted that these patterns bear a striking resemblance to the Nazca lines in Peru, but on a continental scale. They are so vast, so perfectly straight, that they defy any known natural process of glaciation or geology. And the materials themselves are a puzzle. Magnetic surveys of these subglacial structures reveal that they are composed of materials with a high magnetic susceptibility, inconsistent with the surrounding bedrock. This suggests the use of iron-rich alloys or other advanced materials in their construction.
They are, in effect, magnetic ghosts, their presence felt even through a 2-mile thick shield of ice. The Wilkes Land crater, a massive impact feature buried under the East Antarctic ice sheet, adds another layer to the mystery. This crater, over 300 miles in diameter, is associated with the Permian-Triassic extinction event. But at its center, there is a large mass concentration, a mascon, detected by gravity anomaly measurements. This mascon is a puzzle. It could be the dense metallic core of the impactor that caused the crater. Or, as some have speculated, it could be something else, something artificial, a massive object, perhaps a city, or a technological installation that was buried by the impact, its dense structure creating the gravity anomaly we detect today. And what of the life that existed there? The fossil record of pre-glacial Antarctica is rich. It was a world of temperate rainforests, home to a unique ecosystem. But the transition to an ice-covered world was, in geological terms, remarkably fast. Did a civilization witness this change? Did they try to stop it? The evidence of climate engineering we see elsewhere in the geological record could have been attempts by an Antarctic civilization to hold back the encroaching ice. They might have pumped greenhouse gases into the atmosphere to warm the planet only to fail. Or, perhaps more chillingly, they succeeded for a time. Perhaps the long periods of climatic stability we see in the geological record were not natural, but were the result of a civilization actively managing the planet's thermostat, a project that eventually, catastrophically, failed. The final retreat of this civilization might have been into the Earth itself. The geothermal anomalies at Lake Vostok could be the signature of vast subglacial cities powered by the planet's internal heat. In these deep, isolated sanctuaries, a remnant of this ancient civilization might have survived, perhaps for millennia, before finally succumbing to the cold. Or perhaps they didn't succumb. Perhaps they are still there, dormant, waiting. Antarctica is not a dead continent. It is a sleeping one. And
If a previous civilization was advanced enough to have a global industrial footprint, it's almost certain they would have looked to the stars. Space travel, even on a rudimentary level, would be an inevitable step. And while their launch sites and ground infrastructure would have been erased from Earth, space itself offers a far more stable environment for preservation. An artifact placed in a stable orbit could survive for tens of millions of years. So, scientists began to practice a new kind of archaeology, space archaeology. They started to look for the ghosts, not in the rock, but in the void. For decades, astronomers have been aware of a handful of strange objects in Earth's orbit that do not correspond to any known satellite launch. They are often dismissed as space debris or misidentified asteroids, but some of them defy easy explanation. They occupy unusually stable, high-altitude orbits, sometimes retrograde, moving against the flow of all our modern satellites. Consider the Lagrange points. These are 5 positions in space where the gravitational pull of the Earth and Sun are perfectly balanced. An object placed at a Lagrange point will stay there indefinitely with minimal fuel. They are the prime real estate of the solar system. We have started placing our most important telescopes, like the James Webb, at these points. What if we weren't the first to realize this? Recent deep space surveys have begun to systematically scan these Lagrange points, and they are finding faint, anomalous objects. These objects are dark, non-reflective, and appear to be made of materials with densities far higher than that of natural asteroids. They are spectrally neutral, suggesting they might be composed of advanced alloys or ceramics designed to withstand the harsh environment of space for eons. Are these ancient probes? Dormant sentinels placed in gravitational parking spots millions of years ago, silently watching the world evolve below? The evidence extends beyond Earth's orbit. The Moon, with no atmosphere and no geology, is a perfect museum. Anything that landed there would be preserved almost perfectly. Lunar reconnaissance missions have mapped the Moon's surface with incredible precision, and they have found things that are hard to explain. Small geometric craters in patterns that defy random impacts, anomalous magnetic fields in areas with no corresponding geological features, and strange concentrations of elements like processed titanium and uranium in the lunar soil, in places where they shouldn't be. Is it possible we are seeing the remains of ancient mining operations, the abandoned outposts of a civilization that used the Moon as a stepping stone to the rest of the solar system? This idea that our predecessors were not just terrestrial, but a spacefaring civilization, radically changes the search. Because if they made it to space, they would have left behind a legacy that is almost immortal. A trail of breadcrumbs scattered across the solar system, waiting for the next species from their home world to evolve, look up, and come find them. The silence we hear from the stars might not be the silence of an empty universe. It might just be the silence of our own abandoned backyard. Let's push this further. If a civilization had a presence in space, it would not be limited to small probes. The drive for resources and expansion would lead them to the asteroid belt, a treasure trove of metals and minerals. And here, the evidence becomes even more intriguing. The asteroid Psyche is a giant hunk of metal, believed to be the exposed core of a protoplanet that was destroyed in the early solar system. But some asteroids are not so easily explained. There are a number of asteroids with strange compositions and densities. Some appear to be rubble piles, but their rotation and structure suggest they were artificially assembled. And then there is the dwarf planet Ceres. It has bright spots on its surface that are now known to be salt deposits, but it also has a strangely smooth surface for an object of its age, and evidence of past geological activity that is hard to explain. Could it have been an outpost, a water source for an interplanetary civilization? The most ambitious project a spacefaring civilization might undertake is the construction of a Dyson swarm, a vast cloud of solar power collectors orbiting the Sun to capture its energy. Such a structure would be the hallmark of a truly advanced civilization. We have searched for such structures around other stars, looking for the telltale dimming of starlight. We have found nothing. But what if one was built here,
in our own solar system? And what if it's no longer functional? A derelict Dyson swarm would, over millions of years, break apart due to gravitational perturbations and collisions. Its components would become a new asteroid belt, a cloud of debris with a very specific artificial composition. Is it possible that some of the debris in our solar system is not primordial, but is in fact the wreckage of a mega-engineering project from a forgotten age? When we analyze the composition of meteorites that fall to Earth, we occasionally find inclusions that are baffling. Isotopes that seem to have been subjected to artificial processes, crystal structures that could only form under controlled conditions. We dismiss them as curiosities, but perhaps they are fragments of a lost technological empire. The search for these paleo-artifacts is in its infancy, but the idea that our solar system may be a graveyard of ancient technologies is a powerful one. It suggests that our predecessors were not just planet-bound, they were travelers. They built, they explored, and then, for some reason, they vanished, leaving behind only these faint echoes in the void. A derelict satellite, a depleted mine on the moon, a cloud of wreckage where once there was a machine that harnessed the power of a star. And with that, I invite you to rest now and drift into sleep.
Imagine a civilization that sees its own end approaching. Whether through war, climate collapse, or the slow march of an ice age, they know their time is over. What do they do? Their most profound, most desperate instinct would be to leave a message, a warning, a legacy, a final attempt to speak across the abyss of time. But how do you build a message to last for 60 million years? Paper turns to dust, metal corrodes, digital data corrupts. Any physical medium is doomed. An advanced civilization would realize this. They would need to build their message out of something more permanent. They would need to build it out of the planet itself, or out of something even more fundamental. This is perhaps the most speculative and most profound part of the Silurian hypothesis. The idea that previous civilizations may have left deliberate, encoded messages for their successors, for us. One of the most promising candidates for such a message is DNA. The genetic code is an incredibly dense and stable information storage system. Life has been carrying genetic information for nearly 4 billion years. What if an ancient civilization encoded information, scientific formulas, historical records, philosophical texts, into the non-coding regions of DNA, the so-called junk DNA of extremophile bacteria? These bacteria, capable of surviving in deep earth vents or frozen in ice, could act as living time capsules, preserving the message for geological ages. Scientists are now developing the tools to search for such artificial signatures within genomes. They are looking for patterns that are too complex, too mathematical, too ordered to be the product of natural evolution. Another possibility is even more exotic.
They may have encoded messages in the very physical constants of our universe, creating subtle, artificial patterns in what we assume to be natural phenomena. For instance, in the distribution of prime numbers, or in the fine structure constant of the cosmos. But the most direct approach would be to manipulate geology itself. A civilization could create artificial isotope ratios in stable, long-lasting rock formations, arranged in a pattern that is clearly artificial. Imagine a vein of granite where the ratio of oxygen-16 to oxygen-18 spells out the value of pi in binary. It would be a beacon, unmistakable to any civilization that had mastered nuclear physics. We are only now developing the technology to look for such messages. We are just learning the language of deep time. For all we know, our planet is a library, and we have been living in it without knowing how to read the books. The messages might be warnings, detailed accounts of how they failed, climate models showing the tipping points they crossed, the social and political failures that led to their demise. It would be a horrifying but priceless inheritance. Or the messages could be a gift, a starter kit for a young civilization, the fundamentals of physics, maps of the galaxy, blueprints for clean energy technologies that they discovered too late. If such a message exists, finding it would be the single most important discovery in human history. It would prove we are not alone in our intelligence, even if we are separated by an ocean of time. It would give us a roadmap to navigate the perilous phase of technological adolescence that they apparently did not survive. We might be the inheritors of a tragic and beautiful legacy, a message in a bottle sent from a world that drowned, hoping the next inhabitants of their shore would learn to build a better boat. The challenge of creating such a message is immense. The medium must be both durable and unmistakably artificial. A civilization would need to think like a geologist, a biologist, and a cryptographer all at once. Let's explore the DNA hypothesis further. The human genome contains 3 billion base pairs. Over 98% of it does not code for proteins. For a long time, we called this junk DNA. We now know that some of it plays a regulatory role, but vast stretches of it still have no known function. What if it's not junk? What if it's a message? In 2013, a team of physicists from Kazakhstan claimed to have found a structured mathematical and linguistic pattern in human DNA. They called it the wow signal of the genome. Their research was controversial and has not been widely accepted, but it opened a door. It made scientists ask, what would an artificial message in DNA look like? It would likely be highly compressed, using a mathematical language. It might contain error correction codes to protect it from mutations over millions of years. And it might be dormant, designed to be unreadable until a species develops the technology of genetic sequencing. We are that species. We are reading the book of life for the first time. Are we also reading the last testament of a lost world? And what about a geological message? It would have to be big and obvious. Imagine a vast deposit of minerals arranged not by the slow chaos of geology, but by the precise hand of an engineer. A mountain range where the peaks form a perfect geometric progression. A series of canyons carved to represent the waveform of a hydrogen atom. These would be messages written in the language of landscape. Or consider the very rhythm of the planet. The Milankovitch cycles, the periodic changes in Earth's orbit and tilt that drive ice ages, are a natural clock. A sufficiently advanced civilization could subtly alter this clock. They could nudge an asteroid to change the planet's orbital resonance, introducing a tiny, artificial perturbation into the natural rhythm. A signal that would be undetectable to a young civilization, but screamingly obvious to one that had mastered celestial mechanics. A knock on the door broadcast across 1,000,000 years. The most chilling possibility is that the message is not just information, it's a key that unlocks a dormant technology. Imagine a specific DNA sequence that, when activated by a synthetic chemical, awakens a new biological function, or a geological formation that, when stimulated with a specific frequency of energy, reveals a hidden power source. In this scenario, our predecessors didn't just leave us a message, they left us an inheritance. A technological legacy locked away, waiting for us to prove we are worthy of it. The act of finding and deciphering the message would be the final test. A test of our intelligence, our wisdom, and our ambition. The question is, what would we do with such a gift? And what if it's not a gift, but a trap?
The silence from the stars is the central puzzle of the Fermi paradox. With billions of habitable planets in our galaxy, many of them billions of years older than Earth, intelligent life should be common. So where is everybody? The Silurian hypothesis offers a chillingly elegant solution. It suggests that the great filter, the hypothetical barrier that stops life from achieving a long-lasting, galaxy-spanning presence, is not something in our future, it's in our past. The evidence of repeated advanced civilizations rising and falling on our own planet suggests that the filter is the nature of technological intelligence itself. Perhaps any species that develops the power to reshape its planet is inherently prone to self-destruction. The cycle becomes predictable. A species evolves intelligence. It discovers science and technology. It harnesses energy, first through burning wood, then fossil fuels, then the atom. This creates an industrial explosion, a golden age of growth. But this growth is unsustainable. The civilization inevitably alters its planet's climate, depletes its resources, and poisons its biosphere. This leads to collapse. A long dark age follows. The planet slowly heals over millions of years. The geological record of the failed civilization is buried, compressed, and almost entirely erased. And then a new species evolves in the ruins of the old world, finds the same laws of physics and begins the cycle anew. If this is true, then Earth is a cradle that has also been a tomb, over and over again. We are not the first children of this world. We are just the latest in a long line of failed experiments. This is a terrifying thought, but it also contains a sliver of hope, because we are the first civilization on this planet to develop the scientific capacity to read the geological record. We are the first to be able to detect the faint chemical ghosts of our predecessors. We are the first to understand that there is a cycle, and that means we might be the first with a chance to break it. The warnings left by our predecessors are not just hypothetical messages in DNA. They are written in the rock layers of the PETM. They are in the nuclear scars of the Permian extinction. They are in the fossil gaps that tell of worlds that were unmade. Our current trajectory is alarmingly familiar. Our carbon emissions are rising at a rate comparable to the PETM. We possess nuclear arsenals capable of creating our own extinction-level event. We are manipulating genetics with an incomplete understanding of the consequences. We are walking, step for step, down the same path that led to ruin before. But now we know. We have the data. We have the history written in stone. The Silurian hypothesis is not just a scientific curiosity. It is an urgent, existential challenge. It reframes our entire civilization not as a story of progress, but as a test. Can we learn from the ghosts? Can we be the ones who finally get it right? Or will our own Anthropocene layer simply become another thin scar in the rock, another warning for a civilization that will evolve 60 million years from now and wonder if they too were the first? The choice is ours. The entire history of intelligence on this planet may depend on it. The great filter in this context is not a single event. It's a series of traps that are laid by a civilization's own success. The trap of easy energy leading to climate change. The trap of tribalism armed with weapons of mass destruction. The trap of exponential growth on a finite planet. Each technological leap forward creates a new, more sophisticated way to fail. Consider the development of artificial intelligence. It promises to solve many of our problems, but it also presents an existential risk. An unchecked, super-intelligent AI could become a filter in itself. Is it possible that one of our predecessors created such an intelligence and lost control? A technological singularity that resulted not in a transcendent utopia, but in the quiet, efficient extinction of its creators. The geological record would show a civilization at its technological peak and then nothing, an abrupt end with no clear cause. Or consider the trap of virtual reality. A civilization could create simulated worlds so compelling that they abandon the real one. Their biological forms would wither away. Their physical infrastructure would crumble, while their consciousnesses lived on in digital paradises. From the outside, it would look like a mass extinction, but it would be a voluntary one. A quiet, digital suicide of an entire species. The Silurian hypothesis implies that these filters are not just possibilities, they are probabilities. They have been encountered before, and they have not been passed. The fact that we are here is a testament not to our superiority, but to our youth.
We haven't been playing the game for long enough to lose. But our awareness of the game is our one unique advantage. We can study the failures of the past. We can see the traps ahead. The PETM teaches us about climate change. The nuclear signatures teach us about war. The fossil gaps teach us about the fragility of the biosphere. The entire planet is a history book filled with cautionary tales. The responsibility this places on us is immense. We are no longer just a species trying to survive. We are the custodians of a planetary experiment in intelligence that has failed perhaps many times before. Our success or failure is not just our own. It will determine the future of consciousness on this world for millions of years to come. Do we have the wisdom to choose a different path, to manage our technology, to steward our planet, to overcome our self-destructive impulses? The ghosts of the Silurian are watching, and they are silent.
But what if the cycle of collapse is not the whole story? What if a previous civilization, seeing its own end, did more than just leave a message? What if they left behind a system, a silent, autonomous guardian, designed to shepherd the next civilization, us, through the most dangerous parts of its development? This is the most audacious extension of the hypothesis, that we are not just living among the ruins of the past, but are being actively, if subtly, guided by its remnants. Consider the improbable stability of Earth's climate over the last few million years during the rise of humanity. The planet has gone through ice ages and warm periods, but it has remained within a remarkably narrow band of habitability. There have been no runaway greenhouse effects, no catastrophic asteroid impacts, no nearby supernovae. We have been, in a cosmic sense, incredibly lucky. Or has it been luck? An advanced civilization, foreseeing its demise, might have created a planetary defense system, a network of autonomous probes in the solar system, designed to detect and deflect incoming asteroids, a subglacial atmospheric processor in Antarctica, designed to regulate greenhouse gases and stabilize the climate, a deep Earth system that could manage plate tectonics, preventing supervolcanic eruptions. These sound like technologies from a distant future, but to a civilization that was millions of years ahead of us, they might have been achievable. They would be the ultimate legacy, a set of planetary training wheels designed to give their successors a fighting chance. We would not be able to detect such systems directly. They would be designed to be unobtrusive, to operate within the noise of natural phenomena. A deflected asteroid would look like a near miss. A stabilized climate would look like a period of good fortune. A prevented eruption would be an event that simply never happened. But we might see their traces, the anomalous orbits of certain near-Earth asteroids, the strange long-term stability of the ozone layer despite natural fluctuations that should have depleted it, the puzzling lack of supervolcanic eruptions in the last 70,000 years, despite geological models predicting we are overdue for one. And there is another, more intimate possibility. The guidance might not be external, but internal, within our own biology. We've already considered the idea of a message in our DNA. What if it's more than a message? What if it's a set of instructions, dormant genetic programs designed to be activated by specific environmental or technological triggers? Imagine a set of genes that enhance abstract thought and cooperation, that only become active when a species develops complex language. Or a biological resistance to certain industrial pollutants that awakens only after a civilization begins to contaminate its own environment. This would be a form of guided evolution, a biological roadmap left by our predecessors to help us survive the traps they fell into. This idea of a guardian technology is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it is a comforting thought that we are not alone, that we are being protected. On the other, it is profoundly unsettling. It would mean that our history, our evolution, our very thoughts have not been entirely our own. We have been a guided project. And it raises the final, most important question. If these guardians exist, are they still active? And if so, what is their end game? Are they simply trying to ensure our survival? Or are they waiting for us to reach a certain level of maturity, a point at which they will finally reveal themselves and welcome us into a legacy that is older than our species, older than the mountains, older than our wildest dreams? The greatest secret on earth may not be that we were not the first. It may be that the first never truly left. We look out into the cosmos, searching for a sign that we are not alone. But perhaps the most profound discovery is not out there, but right here. The realization that our world has been alive with intelligence for longer than we can comprehend. That we are inheritors of a legacy of triumph and failure that stretches back into the deep past. The earth is not a blank slate. It is a palimpsest, a manuscript written and erased countless times. Beneath the veneer of our modern world lies the shadow of forgotten ones. Their achievements fuel our technologies. Their failures warn us of our own hubris. We are not alone. We are standing on the shoulders of ghosts, and they are whispering to us from the rock, from the ice, and from the silence. They're asking one question: will you be different?